Hello. How's it going, Jeannie? I hope you're doing well. Let's get the music started. All right. So, we have one more big section of the game book to go, and we're going to try our best to get through it all tonight. We'll see how successful we are at that, though. All right. But yeah, hope you're doing well. And you know what? Just for good luck, let me do a cast myself to see if I get anything good. Come on, good luck, good luck, good luck, good luck. It's... I'll take a lobster. I'm satisfied with a lobster. Alright, so last time we ended out the stream talking about hedge ghosts, the ephemeral spirits that are created by and reside in, well, the hedge. I suppose we have enough time. I mean, I'm not in a particular rush. We can go over some of the example hedge ghosts. The lingering dead were living once. They were humans who had the misfortune to enter the hedge and never found their way out. They were changelings who veered from safe paths and wound up face to face with the wandering nightmares. They are all that was left once the briar wolves were done feasting, or after the loyalists' silver blade slipped through their hearts. These ghosts are the impressions and raw emotions of lives once lived, and none of them can get home. A stronger ghost might still have a purpose it hopes to fulfill and haunts its old entrances to the hedge, hoping one of its motley, or someone reminiscent of them at least, will come through and help them carry out its final acts. Or maybe the phantom hitchhiker of the Trods. That's an urban legend among changelings, especially in freeholds whose cities are host to major Trods. The lost in these places tell stories, often ones they heard from a wisp who knew this gargoyle, who knew this weasand, of motleys traveling along a trod, but who suddenly found themselves joined by another traveler. She's always a quiet girl, polite, a little shy. Sometimes she simply walks alongside them a while before she vanishes just as mysteriously as she arrived. Sometimes she asks to borrow a jacket or begs a bite of food. A few stories says that she's mentioned her freehold, and when the motley's gone to tell the lost there about the encounter, they learn she disappeared decades ago. She headed into the hedge, never to be seen again.
Did you get
home, dear? I did.
Thank you.
Huh. Oh boy. Hobgoblins. I love these little weirdos. They are absolute freaks in the highest sense of the word I can offer. They are essentially the beings who reside in the hedge that, well, aren't changelings, true fae, huntsmen, or hedge ghosts, which means an awful lot of things, really. But let's try and learn a little more about them, even if we don't go in depth into how to craft one for NPC purposes. The hedge is a liminal space, the in-between realm where aspects of Arcadia and the mortal world coexist and bleed together. Hobgoblins, the denizens of the hedge, are as numerous as the stars in the sky. They're strange and lovely and terrible, some born of the hedge or twisted by it, others crafted by the true Fae and forgotten, discarded and left to fend for themselves amongst the brambles. Many were beings from the mundane world who made one too many Fae deals, or found a way into the hedge and became trapped there, the thorns leeching away what they used to be and warping them into weirder, truer versions of their old selves. Hobgoblins can be as tiny as a mote of dust or as vast as the sky. Many are innocuous tricksters, intrigued by the loss that passed by their nests, and wanting nothing more than to pluck a strand of hair to satisfy their curiosity. Others are predators, seeking out the satisfying crack of mortal bones between their hundreds of teeth. It's not always clear which is which. Many hobgoblins... Sorry. I wanted to make sure that Totoro hadn't been trapped in the recording room with me. Many hobgoblins carve out hollows, pushing back the thorns to make a safe haven and a home for themselves. These might look inviting to a weary traveler, but that is often precisely the point. Lure in the prey, ply them with sweets and songs until their lids grow heavy, then strike. So, creating hobgoblins, as they are an amalgam of nightmares and fairy tales and never ever entirely what they seem, makes it a little difficult to do so. However, not all hobgoblins have their hearts set on baking passing changelings into pies. Some dwellers in the hedge might become allies, or have need of the Motley's aid. Having a hobgoblin and her dread powers on the character's side can be just as interesting a tale as going toe to cloven hoof with her. So what inspirations from fairy tales and folklore might inform the hobgoblin? Are there aspects of the character's stories that the hobgoblins could play on? Their backstories, their durances, intrigue within the freehold and courts, their goals, aspirations, it's all potential fodder. Hobgoblin aspirations are wildly different from those of most mortals, however. All of them have at least one aspiration. Like player characters, have 2 short-term and 1 long-term to start off. However, these aspirations could be things like make a cloak from ogre skins, or free my children from the Witch of the Wilds. Things that, might not be the most relatable to the average changeling. Now, interestingly, hobgoblins are not generally mechanically able to take advantage of human interaction the same way that changelings are. So they're not able to get any amount of glamour from interacting with humans. However, that said, that's only in the sense of reaping or harvesting. If we look at things like making deals with mortals, that's plenty of power source for them. Same with eating goblin fruits. A goblin who makes a deal for glamour in exchange for something else doesn't need any particular powers to receive it. It's just here and there instantly. Also, they do still have virtues and vice. However, they don't really mean the same thing to a hobgoblin. What they would consider virtuous or vice-ridden, as you might consider a human. For a hobgoblin, a virtue might be lethargic, and a vice might be overeager. Well, no, that sounds too much like it could be something. A vice might be crustacean. No, that's also nonsense. The point being, it can be weird. Excuse me. Hobgoblins also have frailties like changelings. Like all Fae, they are also very weak to cold to iron. And there might be other frailties as well along the way, but not necessarily anything concrete. You know what? Just for the heck of it, let's go back to look at frailties again. Minor frailties could be in terms of taboos. Something like an inability to approach a dwelling with milk set out at the door, a compulsion to count spilled grains of rice, an inability to step on lines. Minor banes might be something like touching wolfsbane, the sound of church bells or wind chimes, or hearing one's name said backwards. You can try to resist the behavior associated with the taboo by burning through your willpower, but it's still going to be difficult, and being exposed to any bane at that level would cause active lethal damage to you. And then, of course, major ones are just, the same, but much worse. I swear we'll get back to the page I was on someday. There we go. And then Chronicles of Darkness has this sort of universal monstrous special supernatural power thing, where basically if you want to create something to be monstrous, and you don't necessarily need it to be following a specific system mechanically, you can just give it a bunch of dread powers, which are kind of usually fairly generic supernatural powers, but they like to spend a little bit of time adding additional ones for whatever the specific one is. Like, none of the other ones probably have the ability to conjure dreams, for instance. A lot of them are pretty straightforward powers, but I do appreciate that they do kind of have a little bit of fairy tale weirdness flavor. I think one of my favorite powers is Much Depends on Dinner. It gives them the ability to create a banquet of incredibly tantalizing foods. Anyone who sees or smells it instantly incredibly hungry and drawn to the table, where they have to eat their fill unless they're able to make a resistance roll to break free of the compulsion. And when they do break free, then they realize, oh, I have been eating literal garbage. It's such a specific, niche application for a power, but I really enjoy that. I don't know why it feels like this is a little quieter than normal, but hopefully people are still enjoying this, whoever it is that is watching tonight. If I haven't gotten in touch with you before, though, how are you? Did you have a good day? I hope you did. You know, every so often, I do manage to find some new VTubers or streamers in generals to follow through, lurking around. So it's really nice when I'm able to, talk with people. Oh, you had a nap? Hey, a nap sounds very good to me. Sorry, I'm so easily distracted. Oh gosh. Anywho, let me try and get myself back on track. Let's take a look at some of these example hobgoblins. Oh, briar wolves. You know, at least in Western fairy tale canon, you're hard-pressed to find an animal that has quite as potent a connotation as the wolf, you know? Like, the wolf is so often used as, like, a metaphor for an inevitable doom, a death. Death in general, really. And that's something that is still super common. Like, think about the Puss in Boots' The Last Wish movie. That's drawing directly from fairy tales. And again, you have this wonderful association of the wolf character, the big bad wolf. Well, briar wolves aren't necessarily going to be as dangerous, but it's still going to be pretty bad for anyone who runs into one. Countless fairy tales and folk tales tell listeners about the danger of wolves. They're the ultimate hunters, the hungry beasts that stalk nighttime forests and snatch disobedient children into their gaping maws. How much more frightening, then, are the wolves who live among the brambles, whose hunting grounds are the fear-tinged woods of the hedge? No one is quite sure where the briar wolves came from. Some theories posit that they were once wolves from the mundane world who wandered their way into the hedge and couldn't get out. The thorns tore at their pelts, and the fears of changelings who grew up on tales of wolves' cunning and cruelty twisted them into something even more terrible. Or perhaps they were the hunting hounds of the gentry. The true fae are notorious for discarding what no longer holds their interest, and a fickle master may have loosened his kennels on the hedge. Or perhaps the hedge itself created them, pain and fear given form and fur, and charged them with keeping those who have lost the path from finding it and escaping. No matter the truth of their origins, briar wolves are among the hedge's most frightening hunters. They're part wolf, but have eerily human features. Their hands end in wicked, clawed fingers. They stand on two legs, but can run just fine and just as fast on all fours. Their eyes are human eyes, always human eyes. Briar wolves smell of dirt and meat and old, dried blood, and their mouths are full of too many teeth. When they're on the hunt, their howls cut to the bone. I like this. This feels way more souped up from the description they gave to Briar Wolves in the first edition. I like the leaning into the more uncanny werewolf-like humanoid features. That's really nice. So, like real wolves, pack animals, pack hunters. Interesting, though, and again, leaning into the fairy tale motif, their frailty is they're not allowed to step onto the trod uninvited. Which, again, we're going right back into Fairy Tales 101. You always have to have a clear consequence to transgressing against the rule. So, if you stay on the path that your parents tell you about when you're trying to visit your grandmother, then you will be safe. If you step off the path, though, the big bad wolf may get you. I like it. Very simple, but the flavor of it really comes through. Deep cave monster. Ominous rumbling, like the earth shifting, or a stomach growling? The deep caves are narrow tunnels lined with razor-sharp gems. Their caverns twist far, far into the ground, and their paths change around the traveler, making it easy to get lost within. Perhaps they've always been there. Stories warning away those who come to the hedge seeking treasure have spread for years. The lost and the Fae avoid them when they can, no matter how tempting the gems may be, because the caves are alive, and they are hungry. Those who venture inside rarely make it back out. They have entrances all across the hedge. For the most part, they appear the way an average cave does. Openings in a rocky outcropping or mountainside leading below ground, but bright gems with razor-sharp edges stud the walls, ceilings, and floors of the cave. Once a changeling hears the rumor that these gems are teeth, it's hard to see the cave entrance as anything other than a hungry maw. So, I want to start off this stream by giving a very big thank you to Absurd Bird. Absurd Bird is, well, other than a lovely person and a regular viewer, someone who I've been consulting with on matters of making my Changeling the Lost Las Vegas setting feel as authentic as I can. And one of the things I'm thinking about now is Nevada is the Silver Rush state, right? Perhaps it's the deep caves in this region of the hedge would have silver ore instead of gems? I'm not sure. It feels right, though. Okay. Hey, Shinon. How's it going? Hope you're having a good day today. Now, we've already mentioned, albeit indirectly, that it is possible for mundane creatures, even mundane people, to become changelings. Battleborn brought into the Union for the Motherlode to fund the war. Yeah, that sounds about right. Now, one of the specific ways that you can become a hobgoblin, if you are a normal person, is through goblin debt, which is what happens when you use the powers of goblin contracts and you don't pay off your debt. For example, let's meet Liza Cantwell, age 9, goblin queen. Liza's been in the hedge for about a year now, left by someone who took so many goblin contracts and gathered so much debt that she became a goblin queen herself. To shed that debt, she found a little girl to take her place. The woman tricked Liza into following her into the hedge, then left her there to become the new goblin queen. Liza missed her parents at first, but when she gets sad, the pixies entertain her and make her laugh again. Sometimes they lead her on a chase and the thorns cut her. It probably should hurt, but it doesn't. Not really. And she doesn't feel so sad afterwards. Liza is a 9-year-old girl wearing a finely made but very dirty dress. Changelings who have met the impeccable artisan, Madame Thimblestitch, might recognize her handiwork. She also wears a woven crown of flowers held in place by her tangled hair. Liza still carries her backpack, which contains her last few school assignments, a library book, and a handout about stranger danger. A little on the nose there with the irony. I like that she's ultimately just a kid. You know? Like, she's prone to wild mood swings as a kid is wont to do, but it's still surprisingly pretty mentally well balanced. I don't know, I like the idea that one of the most sane hobgoblins that you could run into in this example section is just a 9-year-old child. Speaking of, let's meet her seamstress, Madame Thimblestitch. Gossips at the Goblin Market say Madame Thimblestitch was once a seamstress for one of the gentry. So long ago, she even forgets when it was. She displeased her lady, who turned her out to live in the hedge. Whatever her offense was is long forgotten, even by Madame Thimblestitch herself. Now she wanders about collecting scraps from the thorns and sewing them into little monstrosities. She's old and white-haired with pointed ears and needle-sharp teeth. Her hands are nimble, her fingers calloused. She wears fine clothing, fit for a lady's court, and every piece of it her own work. What a girl boss, honestly. A handful of little rag dolls often follow her around, all of them made from the scraps of souls she plucks from the hedge's thorns as she walks about. Again, I like that there's nothing inherently hostile or dangerous about this character. She's just an old lady that likes to gossip, have tea, and sew. Honestly, kind of an ideal person to grow up to be, like, I should hope. Ad starting. Sorry about that, folks. But if we have that little ad block, or ad break, ads will be blocked for the next hour at least. Does anyone have an idea they think would make for a fun hobgoblin, by the way? I'm very curious. If you do, let me know in the comments. By which I mean chat, I get. hobgoblin or role model? Now that's what we're talking about, Absurd Bird. But no, I resonate with Madame Thimblestitch, I think. I very much appreciate her. Next in our list of fun new friends, we have Moss Pocket. Moss Pocket once owned a fine house in the hedge. It had secret rooms and reading nooks and a little squirrel-faced woman who brought him tea every afternoon. A canny group of changelings tricked him out of the house, and the secret rooms, and the reading nooks, and even the little squirrel-faced woman. And Moss Pocket was forced to leave with nothing but his satchel full of parchment and ink. The changelings are long dead, and even though Moss Pocket's house now stands empty, and the encroaching brambles threaten its lawn, he can't go back. The changelings held the deed, and he doesn't know who they passed it on to. Instead, he makes deals with anyone he can, hoping to trade up and up until he can find the person who holds the fairy deed to his fairy house and swap them their heart's desire for his own. Moss Pocket appears as a young man with owl-like features that actually include feathers on his face. It's Owl Boy! I remember that video game. His coat rustles, with all the parchments tucked into its pockets, and his satchels clink with jars of ink and pen. Again, like, this is just a man who wants his lo-fi house to chill in back. I think that's completely reasonable, you know? Trod Trolls. Like their cousins of legend, the Bridge Trolls, Trod Trolls demand tributes, favors, or tasks from those who wish to pass. Many of them make their homes in hollows close to a trod, where they can hear the footsteps or hoofbeats and carriage wheels of approaching travelers. The trolls move out to block the road, and refuse to let the travelers continue on their journey until they've paid their way. This tribute can take many forms: a sack of goblin fruit, favors owed, or anything else the troll might need or senses the changeling's value. Some changelings refuse to pay the tribute and instead attempt to leave the path, skirting into the thorns to avoid the troll and his reach. Doing so is risky. Leaving the path for any reason oft leads to disaster. Landing the changeling somewhere dangerous and unfamiliar. The trolls know this too, and chooses spots to block where abandoning the road is especially ill-advised. I love how this description starts off. Trod trolls are huge. No, I know what you're thinking of. Bigger than that. They're large enough to plunk themselves down in the middle of the road and leave no room for a traveler to squeeze by on either side and still remain on the path. Often they change their skin to resemble the road itself, so they blend in from a distance. They might be the pale gray of cobblestones, the dusty beige of a dirty, dry road, or the deep dark brown of a muddy road after a rainstorm. Hey Sarah, welcome, welcome. And finally, for our examples here, the waking nightmare. Once upon a time, a changeling plagued by the dreams of his time in Arcadia made a bargain with a denizen of the hedge. The hobgoblin took the dreams from the changeling, sealed them up in a green glass bottle, and set off back to his hollow. But along the way, the hobgoblin tripped and the glass bottle broke, setting the nightmare free. it discovered it quite liked being an entity all its own, and it set out in search of others like it. Turns out there were no others like it. So the wandering nightmare did the next best thing. It sought out dreamers, pulled their dreams into its own. Only sometimes gathering dreams meant absorbing the dreamer as well. It is a roiling, roaming cloud of fear. It sticks low to the ground, rolling in like a thick fog. It tinges the landscape as it moves, leaching the color out of its surroundings. At night, it's even harder to spot, creeping up on those who've made camp and staying out of their firelight as long as possible. Sounds are muffled within it, and the world outside the nightmare appears to move much more slowly than it does inside. I mean, I don't have anything to add to that one. That's just really solid writing. Alright. So, when a member of the True Fae would like its property back, odds are they're not going to be going out into the real world to do it themselves. Because that tends to be more hassle than it's worth, really. But they do have something else that they can send after. That is where we get huntsmen. When the True Fae retreat from the corners of Arcadia to hold court and play their games, the land returns to what it once was. Sometimes escaping changelings stumble across these empty realms before they cross into the hedge. These underdeveloped lands devoid of living civilization, a theater stage with scattered props and sets, but no lights or actors. Most often, changelings view them as cold woods, chilled enough to see their breath illumined in moonlight and starlight, a midnight land rife with barrow mounds and watchful eyes. These eyes are both hunter and hunted, air and darkness, assuming thought and form by will or whim. They are the huntsmen. They were in Arcadia before the gentry, and they will be there after the gentry leave. But in this time and place, the gentry rule the lands beyond the hedge, and even those verderers of the woods must acknowledge their authority. When the lost stubbornly refused to be found, the True Fae ventured into the deepest thickets to call upon the huntsmen, who are never far from their masters. Everything has rules. Rules and reliability. You can relate to that? To which part? The crossbow and its quiver of 20 darling daughters are reliable. They do what you expect of them. You're reliable. Your snares will catch. Your sword will draw blood. The woods are treacherous. Without rules and order, the woods will consume you. The woods define you, and they are all you need. The gentry make their own rules, however. Not wanting to bother going out into the mundane world? Oh, that's fair, but absurd, Bird. Legally, you do have to tell me if you're a true fae, or it is entrapment. You're not a true fae, are you? Hmm? Hmm? True? What? I don't know about that. The gentry. Don't you sip your wine at me, you sassy little so-and-so. You made a character for a game of Changeling? Nice. I'm glad to hear that. The gentry make their own rules, however. They come into the woods, magic billowing before them, fog parting in the forest. When they come upon you, they make a swift motion with the surety of a sovereign, removing your heart in sundering grace. Into the cavity pours the desires of the true Fae, a title representing their desire for the lost who has forsaken them, and you become their huntsman. Whatever desires you had before are muted. You now share the same desire for a changeling as the keeper, and you wear the livery of your queen. Your quarry doesn't believe in rules. Your quarry isn't reliable except in one key respect. Changelings run. They always run. And so, the huntsman follows. Often, the herald comes as the first sign of the hunt. The bird of prey alights on a changeling's windowsill, looks her in the eye, and then she hears the voice. "Come home," he says, and she knows the huntsman has her scent and draws nigh. "Follow me and spare yourself the chase. Your lover pines for you. Your master fades without your song. There are contracts to sign and slaves to eat. The kingdom dies without your smile." Sometimes the huntsman's herald is their pet briar hound or hookstrike, in which case their love for their companion is the only thing that persists past the loss of their heart. Only their fury can match it, so woe to any changeling who injures the herald. By the time the herald comes, the huntsman has been observing their prey for weeks, perhaps months. Goblin contacts willing to inform on the changeling have been paid for their silence. Either with glamour or cold iron. The verderers have walked beside her on the street, watching her sup glamour from emotions, eaten the same spicy pork from the same local Burmese place that she has. The herald is an announcement of the hunt, but it also flushes the prey out from her complacent routine. It reminds her she is not safe, and she never will be, and only the rarest and strangest changelings resist the panic that follows so stark a reminder. One who does, and who clings stubbornly to defenses and a routine, finds the attempts to flush her out never cease. The heart that beats inside the huntsman is that of her, their keeper, and they know how to hurt her in manners most intimate. A huntsman never ceases. They can die, after a fashion. They're canny and tough, but they're creatures of flesh and weird like anything else touched by fairy. When you prick them, they bleed rather a lot. They meet attempts to wrong them without revenge. However, for their heart's desire, it is to see a changeling in fetters, dragged through the hedge and brought back to Arcadia's Plutonian shore. Even slaying the huntsman will not end her suffering, for only a chill cavity rests between their ribs, and so long as their heart beats in their stolen bastion, they reform somewhere in the hedge within a month's time to start again. And even when the heart itself is destroyed and the huntsman is no more, the animating title's fire flits back to the keeper from whence it came, and can be sewn into a new huntsman to start the cycle anew. In the colloquial among the lost, the phrase "wild hunt" represents this dread reality. The hunt against them never ends. A furious host will chase them to the ends of the earth, and a huntsman may be coming for them at any time. Huntsmen will pay off privateers, command goblins, and even treat with mortal forces to harass their prey. The panoply. Their sword, their powder horn, their boots. That's what matters. A huntsman's identity is partially sublimated into their tools. Any other feeling was largely lost with their heart. The one-eyed highwayman, the freehold calls him, and their eye patch and tricorn are more central to their self than whatever other name they might once have used. Most huntsmen have at least two tools to their name, some sort of attire and a weapon. This is how you know them, by their tools. Often archaic, always perfectly maintained, never useless. Everything else changes from moment to moment. Height, gender, clothing, personality, aside from the demeanor of the hunter coolly stalking his prey. But the implements, the tools, the panoply, those stay the same. The mask that obscures the changeling's true nature also shields a huntsman's panoply from seeming out of the ordinary. A musket seems like a perfectly mundane item to carry, though someone walking down the street open carrying isn't necessarily abnormal these days anyway. The end of the chase. Inevitably, the chase ends. The huntsman drags their quarry through the hedge toward Arcadia. Clad in iron or a huntsman's snare, a changeling cannot escape as she normally does, and the huntsman will track her more easily. Oh dear. Easily. Within the hedge anyway. The verderers do not hesitate to resort to violence and cold iron, but they sometimes seem more sympathetic than they do outside the hedge, because here they are nearer to their hearts. That is the secret, to anchor them and allow them to manifest fully in the mortal world as creatures of weird and flesh. The true fae must hide the heart of a huntsman within a bastion. For months, even years, alien emotions plague some mortal's sleep. Thoughts of hunting in some dark and deep wood. A huntsman can borrow some of the gentry's talent for onieromancy and head shaping, but they're forever blind to the bastion that holds their heart. The one thing they cannot track down, even with all their cunning, no matter how earnest their hidden longing. Only in the hedge can a changeling sway the huntsman from their mission, if temporarily. The huntsman's natural inclination for order clashes with the obsessive excitement of the changeling's proximity to Arcadia and the fulfillment of the keeper's heart that beats within. The lost can see and feel this tension. It crackles like fatigue, electricity behind their eyes from a dark cloud above the hedge's canopy. Goodness gracious, I can talk. If the changeling can convince or trick the huntsman into letting her find the bastion where her heart waits, escape becomes possible. Within the bastion, the changeling may swear an oath with the huntsman, heart to heart, if they're willing, but the changeling must overcome the fae's desires that spill out from within in a battle of wits or will. As a weird witnessed declaration of true feeling, the oath allows the huntsman to express their own desires once more, asserting their own needs and wants over the keeper's and wresting back control of their fate for a short while. For the scene, no longer. Once that time is over, the fae's desire returns to the fore, but the oath remains. Finally returned, the huntsman's heart can expunge the keeper's title. Even then, though, the oath is still intact, presuming the heart can be found within the tempestuous mortal bastion. What a motley will do with the purest powerless representation of their tormentor is anyone's guess. Letting the verderer live is dangerous, of course, because an oath broken hurts the changeling just as much as it does the huntsman, and an oath is forever. The sworn are irreversibly connected, for good or for ill. But killing them alerts the true Fae as surely as a road flare, and paves the way for a new, unknown adversary to take the huntsman's place. So, mechanically, they're functioning a lot like hobgoblins, though. They conceptually are much more focused specifically on the aspects that they have within the titles that shape them. I really like how their anchors work. They're not just nonsensical, potentially like hobgoblins, or contrarian anyway. They also have the virtue, which is an expression of their keeper, and their vice, which is their own subdued underlying desires. I think that's a really neat touch. Huntsmen can't learn contracts. They can still get dread powers, though. They also can't make goblin deals. However, they're also not affected by cold iron.
Did you beat the boy?
I did. Well, at least they can be immune to cold iron if they get the particular power for it. I'm never quite sure what to do with the powers section. Like, the completionist in me is saying, yes, go through each and every one of the powers in great detail. But the realistic side of me is saying, that's going to be very boring, B. Let's see. I don't know. But does it say? I don't know if it says anywhere if there's any powers that are just universal to all of them. But regardless, I've been beating around the bush for a little too long now, I suppose. I think in a game that is all about dealing with post-traumatic stress and trauma, it's about time to take a look at the thing that would be causing all of that trauma. But with that in mind, let's talk finally about the elephant in the room, the true Fae. 600 aliases describe them. Gentry, good cousins, kindly ones, fair folk, angels, devils, jinn, yokai, spirits, and many, many more. These are lies frightened women and men tell, hoping to appease the vanity of capricious gods. Such false names obscure true ones that no one dares speak, lest careless and impertinent utterance draw their attention from across the thorns. The Lost used the term fae to describe anything that comes from the hedge or beyond it. Hobgoblins, tokens, even themselves. But the true fae, those are the noble, mercurial, unknowable beings that stride larger than life across Arcadia and rule its lands with the divine right of conquerors. Most changelings see keeper as synonymous with gentry, but in truth, Fairy is home to countless others who have no interest in humanity. They wage glorious wars over heart-bound trophies, pitting goblin hordes against one another until blood stains the sky. They plumb the ragged edges and dusty corners of their realm, seeking new voids to fill with their boundless selves. Fae explorers prowling the cold, empty wasteland beyond the borders of their Arcadia were the first to discover the huntsmen in their barrows there, but grew bored with these new playthings until their brethren found a way to put them to better use. A changeling desperate enough to escape her keeper could reach out to its rival, who keeps no human prisoners, for a hint to its weakness, though she may decide the price isn't worth paying after all. A true fae is not a person, to be clear, but a name wrapped in a tapestry of vows and ideals and deals. Deep in the mists of forgotten time, the fae bargained with Arcadia itself, declaring that they would exist, that they would own the land entire and claim it as a vessel for their weird dreams and facets in exchange for a web of arcane rules so complex no one of them could ever know them all. At their core, the Fae are ravenous beings that must possess. They want, and in their all-consuming wanting, they strike bargains to sate their desires, whether for slaves, kingdoms, secrets, or spoils. Changelings who live and labor among them usually see only the tip of the gentry iceberg, but those brave and foolish enough to delve more fully into fairies' mysteries catch a glimpse of the truth. A true fae's name is its heart and its undoing, and all the vast kingdoms and beauteous treasures with which it surrounds itself are made of promises, and promises can be broken. Now, a true fae's name is the very core of its being. It rarely manifests in a comprehensible way unless its titles have all been stripped away or lost. A title is one of many roles a single fae agrees to play, one face of many that it wears, granting it limited omnipotence within the confines of that role. For instance, the Princess of Red Crowns is able to nail her hats to the heads of her victims to conjure up the great and terrible Crimson Keep, because she holds that title. She possesses near infinite power when it comes to nailing hats to people's heads, dragging off wicked children to her keep, and so on and so on. But unless she is also the Tlatoani of crashing serpents, she has no especial control over dragons or violent thunderstorms. No matter what form a title takes, its nature always bleeds through. Every manifestation of the princess, on Earth or in Arcadia, features elements of torture, blood, nails, for example, whether she appears as a blood-drenched mad woman with a hammer, or a children's nursery rhyme about the perils of going out of doors while hatless. The true Fae are the lords and ladies in their palaces of crystal and moonlight. But they are also the palace, and the masked servants, and the forest in which the castle sits. When the courts call the keeper, or what the courts call the keeper, is just one title's manifestation, and even if a changeling kills it, the oaths it made would simply cast a new piece of itself in that role, eventually, and pick up the wild hunt where it left off. Only breaking the deals that created a title in the first place can permanently unravel it, although another Fae may devour it and claim it for themselves. A given title might become a keeper for any number of reasons, and might not be one forever. A changeling's captor might abandon them for 10 years, not to inflict torture of loneliness, but just because its keeper title got distracted with something else for a while and forgot it was a keeper. Some Fae take people for the exquisite flavor of their emotions, or the prize they can extract from human dreams. With their ability to weave dreams symbols into real objects, they pluck the most valuable jewels of dream stuff from the minds of slumbering mortals, and steal them away to adorn their crowns. A beloved memory, a childhood fear, even the certainty itself that one is only dreaming and can wake it at any time. A true Fae may covet these, and only the dreams of humanity can provide. Other gentry might love humans for their ability to present a spirited challenge or entertain them, or might simply prefer human servants to goblin ones for the smell. One Fae might plot to take more human prisoners than another for no reason other than to compete. Some titles may even need to capture humans as a term of their deals to exist, which means a changeling might escape by finding loopholes in those deals. The others have built a kingdom that conforms to their every whim, but without their age-old pledges, they would be nothing. More importantly, they can't take power away from rebellious changelings without taking power away from themselves. An inconceivable notion. Their tangled webs of pacts and obligations are what empower the lost to oppose and evade them. All the world-shaping power and casual immortality a true Fae possesses comes from pacts it signed when it came into being. The contracts it wields are like a changeling's writ large, inscribed into not only itself but its domain. Even the crystal gardens that sing enchanting songs and the treacherous bogs that devour trespassers are contracts. The signature that seals the deal is the oath the Fae swears, and the terms of the oath are complex secrets woven into its realm and the role it plays among the other gentry. Pacts it swears upon its name are existentially binding, and bestow the grandest and most fundamental parts of a Fae's nature that persists across all of its titles. Breaking these pacts condemns it to true destruction. Lesser pacts it swears upon a title may bestow smaller-scale powers only the title can use. Breaking these pacts won't kill a Fae, but it might destroy the title or render one of its powers useless. A true Fae makes deals with entire regalia. For those who weren't here for our previous streams, regalia is the term for a broad concept of reality, such as the notion of travel, or protecting something, or animals and other beasts that you make magical contracts with in order to gain powers over them. Now, a true Fae makes deals with entire regalia, gaining nigh limitless power over their themes within the bounds of the title that uses them. In exchange, it must vow it must keep a physical representation of each regalia it masters. Not always a literal one, though. A sword could very well be a weapon, but it might also be a hunting hawk, a thunderstorm, or a bulldozer. It could even be a jagged cliff that juts out into the sea. Anything that expresses force and forthrightness within the purview of the title that commands it. Some changelings think the Fae have access to more than 6 regalia, deriving even more esoteric powers from treasures rare and peculiar. Like me! Hmm? Oh, thank you for the head pat. I appreciate that. I hope people are enjoying my little ramble. An Arcadian realm, you see, is like a theater. Oh, thank you for the hydrate, Sarah. And the posture check, thank you. And the stretch. I'm glad to hear that. An Arcadian realm is like a theater. The scenery and costumes and faces change, but the framework remains apparent. If an actor just changes her perspective, that is. Anyone wishing to oppose one of the fair folk can do it on some terms. On its terms specifically, dueling with pistols or plotting with its goblin courtiers. And in many cases, that's the only apparent way to do it. But these are uphill battles fought with great sacrifice to little permanent effect. A changeling who learns the true nature of titles and their oaths can quest and scheme to discover the terms or physical key to such an oath. Clever manipulation of the title's manifestation, destroying the regalia outright, or appropriating it and overriding the oath by swearing a more powerful one on someone else's true name, can all force the Fae to break its pact and take power away from it. The Fae war among themselves for countless inscrutable reasons, constantly enmeshed in rivalries, enmities, and shifting alliances. One impetus lies in the gentry's ability to consume each other's titles and add them to their own complement of roles. If a true Fae loses all of its titles and its name is obliterated, it ceases to be. But if even one of its titles persists as part of another Fae, it could reconstitute itself someday, regaining a name, though some convoluted regaining a name through some convoluted set of pledge clauses and happy accidents. A true Fae never appears in a game as anything but the manifestation of one of its titles, or its name if it has no titles left. Characters can't interact with the full breadth of one of the Fair One in any way, shape, or form. Sorry about that. A manifestation could be a character, or it could be a sky citadel, or an enormous clockwork machine, or a flock of platinum birds. Regardless of its form, a title has most of the same traits that a changeling does, although all of its attributes and skills may not be applicable in some forms. Each title has its own set of traits. As a result, it can be difficult for changelings to know whether two titles they interact with are part of the same creature. The motley might be able to bargain with a powerful goblin for rare gentry genealogy or some such, but the most reliable way to tell is to existentially threaten or get rid of one title and see which other fae react. These kinds of broad-scale dealings with the other are rare, worth devoting several stories or an entire chronicle to resolving. Building a fae antagonist with the rules for creating changeling characters goes pretty simply with the following adjustments. I'm not really going to get into the nitty-gritty mechanics of these parts, but that's more for the storyteller to know and for the players to find out. Got a very curious message from someone. I think an old friend of mine misunderstood what Discord is saying I'm doing right now. Well, some things that I can talk about, though, is titles. True Fae can have between 0 and 5 titles. So 5 would be an absolute titan of the gentry in terms of power. 0 would be they only have a name and they are very, very, very vulnerable. I love also how it describes gentry names here. They can have many kinds of names, from a simple Aisha or John to the sound of waves breaking against an ice shelf or a picture of the Wajid, the Egyptian symbol of magic. Strange sounds and images don't especially protect True Fae's names. Once heard or otherwise experienced, A substitute is as good as the name itself, provided the speaker witnessed the Fae's real name and uses the substitute with honest, true intent. Titles are abstract and even enigmatic concepts, but they always refer to an emotion, sensual experience, or object. One may be the Prince of Weeping Rats, while another is the Acolyte of Screams on the Mountain. Every manifestation incorporates the title in some way. This shape or theme is called the title's tell. The Prince of Weeping Rats, for instance, may appear as a rat-headed, crying man holding a scepter, or become an endless, filthy high-rise whose human-looking tenants weep whenever the ruling rats eat their food or steal unattended children. I just really like how fluid you're allowed and encouraged to be with these things, with the king and queen weirdos of the weirdo world in this game. Now, names have power. A fae that knows someone's true name can weave that name into nightmare, tailor-made to drive them into its waiting arms. Anyone a true fae successfully targets with a contract while speaking or otherwise utilizing their true name gains the persistent obsession condition pertaining to that fae, with a context chosen by the target's player. A changeling who learns a fae's true name can speak it aloud to empower herself when she acts against any of its titles, achieving exceptional success more easily. I'm trying not to bully my friend too much, since she has a night shift job that she has to get ready for. But it's also just fun. Anywho. The gentry can make pledges just like any changeling, but they must invest more than just glamour. They have to seal it with something that it considers a possession of it. So it could be a captive changeling, a hobgoblin servant, a dream trinket or a token, a huntsman who wears its livery. Anything that isn't just a manifestation of one of its titles is fair game, as long as the Fae considers it property. If the subject of the sealing follows through on their promise, the Fae must give the possession upon which it swore. And it goes a little bit into specifics for the different kinds of oaths. Here we go. I mentioned that I'm talking about Changeling the Lost, and my Discord friend immediately starts gushing about one of her favorite scenarios, well, not scenarios, but characters she played in like a scenario or a one-shot for this system for someone else. And I'm just like gently ing her to join in the stream one way or another. A true Fae never takes bashing damage from anything other than its Banes, even iron, and it takes lethal damage only from Banes unless an attacker speaks its true name or it breaks an oath, as mentioned above. Only cold iron weapons can deal aggravated damage to the gentry. The intricate web of promises and deals that govern a true Fae makes it vulnerable in other ways too. If a changeling finds a regalia's physical representation and learns one of the rules that binds its title to the Fae, she may be able to manipulate the situation such that the title breaks its oath, as detailed in the bargaining section. Changelings might purchase these rules from goblins in the know, deduce them from patterns they observe after spending a long time with the title, trick it into telling them through clever pledges, and so on and so forth. For example, the Storm King of the Bloody Throne wears an ersatz crown and rules its domain with an iron fist. It has sworn an oath to do so forever, but the contract that binds it to its name says that it is an usurper and will rule only as long as the land has no true monarch. Only one who can remove its sword from the stone in which it's embedded in can be the true monarch, so the Storm King hides stone and sword both deep in the belly of a dark forest, guarded by goblin beasts. When a changeling braves the forest, defeats the beast, finds the stone and pulls out the sword, they become the true queen of the land. And since the Storm King has now broken its oath to rule forever, its fate is in the new queen's hands. So as you can see, this is a system that really sets you up for these folkloric fairy tale, fable-style epic adventures, and I could not be more delighted. I mean, that's certainly an option. If Absurd Bird, if you have gone through the trouble of going through a deep, dark, deadly forest with even deadlier goblin beasts to wrench the sword from the stone, claiming your destined birthright of rulership, then yeah. I mean, I think you're allowed to make those choices. Let's see. I'm just checking something real quick. We probably won't be going for too much longer tonight, though, just as a heads up. I definitely want to finish the story that we've been following through here. But I don't know if we'll be going through all of this as well. We'll see. Now, I'm gonna try not to go too in-depth on the possible true Fae, simply because I want to make sure that I leave people wanting more, you know? Anyway. Oh, who am I kidding? I want to read all of them, don't I? Yeah, I do. Okay, well, we'll see. Let's just start. Here's some example gentry if you want to use them in your game or inspiration or what have you. Grandmother, deep in the wood, past Bone Hill and over Rickety Bridge, sits a cozy little cabin. in the middle of a broad clearing. It has a little garden in the back full of dreamadroops and stab apples, a pen for the the piglins and milk beasts, and a stout stone tower rises from one corner. It's here that grandmother raises her children. She takes them from the mortals, the ones who are neglected or abused or just plain running wild and in need of a firm hand. Grandmother has specific ideas about what a family should look like, and she molds her changelings to fit the roles that she sees best. The eldest, who can do no wrong, the gifted child, the black sheep, the forgotten middle child, and so on. Grandmother's vision rarely matches the personality of the youths she takes, but then that's where the conflict comes from. Grandmother's domain encompasses the clearing, the cottage, and a vast tract of dark, spooky woodland surrounding it. The woods are strictly forbidden to all of Grandmother's children, and are fully stocked with dangerous beasts, ghosts, and any number of fairy tale appropriate dangers. They also contain the only paths from Grandmother's domain to the hedge and thence back to Earth. Grandmother herself is the manifestation of this gentry's third title, a sweet, smiling old woman who always resembles the archetypal grandmother figure in whatever culture she's preying on. When she's angered, though, the facade slips. At first, it's just a flash of sharp teeth or burning reptilian eyes, but when she reveals herself in her full fury, Grandmother's a true terror. Spindly, twig-like limbs belie an unholy strength. Papery, wrinkled skin deflects blows like armor, and cruel needle teeth and razor claws dish out horrifying corporal punishment. The grandmother is choosy about the mortals she abducts. Always children, never older than 16 or 17, and all from home life situations that could charitably be described as troubled. Street kids and those stuck in the foster care system, children from abusive households, even latchkey kids grandmother sees as neglected, are all likely targets. Once she's lured or taken them back to her cottage, Grandmother introduces them to their new siblings and puts them in a twisted fairy tale version of a family drama. Over the years, her kids are shaped, willing or not, into changelings reflecting these roles. The bossy oldest child becomes a fairest, while the forgotten middle child becomes a darkling, and the wild child who spends all her time getting punished might end up a ogre or a weasand. At any given time, Grandmother likely has anywhere from 3 to 5 children in the cottage. Inevitably, some of them escape, though almost never all at once. It seems like every time new children arrive, at least one big brother or sister is already there to show them the ropes. Others die. Still others turn 18. Exactly what that means is something the kids debate in hushed after bedtime whispers. Some say Grandmother lets you go, since you're an adult and all. Others say she takes you into the forest and sacrifices you to something even more horrible than she. Still others say that if you're still there on your 18th birthday, you're trapped forever, a true fae in your own right. Grandmother adheres to a decidedly old-school style of parenting. Good children get smiles and sweet treats, goblin fruit that encourage docility and pliability, while bad children provoke her wrath. Bad children are sent to bed without supper, given extra chores, or as a final resort, sent into the wood to cut their own switch. Since this is the only time Grandmother allows any of her children to go past the eaves of the forest, it's often the best chance they have to escape. The Darkling might abandon her brothers and sisters to run while she can, while the fairest refuses to leave them behind. The ogre takes the switch right back to grandmother and dares her to do her worst. The man with the ergot smile. From dream to dream he walks, all dapper suits and bright red umbrella. His back is always to the dreamer, always looking towards the huge thorny gates that loom on the horizon. It doesn't matter if he sees you, though once you've seen him, he infests your dreams, hollows them out until all you can dream of is him, the gates, and the other poor souls he's put his mark on. The more of those he gathers... Oh, Silken Soul, thank you very much for joining the Fluffle. I hope you enjoy it here. I'm sorry that you followed immediately as we went on ad break, but I hope you'll consider sticking around. And if you do, well, I guess if you do, you aren't going to be able to hear this right now. There we go. That should be able to reach them. The more of those he gathers, the more those gates creak open, and every night you wake up screaming. The man with the ergot smile is an exiled true fae, cut off from his titles and dominions by dint of some unfathomable gentry conflict. Oh, got another message from my Discord friend. The terms of his exile are a contract, as are all things in Arcadia. When 100 madmen dream as one, the man may return to Arcadia, and not before. The contract never said this had to occur naturally, and so the man with the ergot smile slips from dream to dream, planting the seeds of his nightmare and nurturing them as patiently as any gardener. When his poisonous dreams finally bloom, he will go home. Three, two, one. Hello! Welcome back, everyone. Sorry about the ads. You always half expect them to not happen. It is a little strange how that does and doesn't happen when it does and doesn't happen, yeah. Hmm. 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 All too aware that being fully embodied is a vulnerability, the man with the ergot smile avoids the physical realm and its attendant dangers. Instead, he lives in the world of dreams, skipping from mind to mind along hidden paths and dreaming roads, never staying too long in one dream realm. He resembles a man, slim and average height, dressed in a slightly old-fashioned black suit with a black bowler hat. The only color about him is a crimson umbrella he carries like a walking stick. Dreamers only ever see him from behind as he looks expectantly towards the gates of Arcadia, but lucid dreamers or changelings hunting him report that his face is startlingly ordinary. Until he smiles, and the world around you and clarity runs like melted wax. I mean, I suppose that wouldn't be a. I suppose that wouldn't be an unaccurate assessment. Also, hey Rustum, how's it going? Though he can no longer rule a realm within Arcadia and thus cannot take new changelings, the man with the ergot smile once held dominion over a vast and twisty sanitarium wherein he broke down captive mortals utterly just to see what they would build themselves back up as. His patients ended up with any seeming, depending on what kinds of tortures he devised and how they managed to endure them. Signs and portents follow the man with the ergot smile, signs that echo the realm he once ruled. When the man is active in the area, admittance at the local mental hospitals spike sharply. Incidents of dancing plague, sudden dissociative states, and St. Anthony's fire trail in his wake, and a trained occultist can use those signs to follow him and pinpoint his next likely victim. Oh. All right. It sounds like a mix of Freddy and Saw. Not not incorrect, I would say. Never mind normal face and umbrella. Well, I mean, is the face of someone with teeth and a smile made of ergot normal? Oh, let's see. I guess let's do one more for now. Let's do the Year of Plague. Under a sullen red sun, the cracked and blistered earth gives up foul vapors and poisoned waters. The dead lay uncounted in their heaps, and the dying are too ravaged by disease to seek shelter or dig graves. Changelings scurry about, seeking succor or escape or a way to stop the plague. The sun rises and sets, the seasons turn, and a year later the board resets. All is as it was, forever and ever, plague without end. The Year of Plague is an unusual Fey title in that its domain isn't a region of Arcadia so much as it is a span of time. Specifically, a year of terrible epidemics and plague outbreaks. Every 365, although really I suppose that should be something more like 365.25 days, the year resets, returning to a zero state shortly after the outbreak. The exact plague and its environs change every year. Sometimes it's London, the middle of the Black Death, or a Ghanaian village during the 1918 influenza pandemic. Other times, it resembles no earthly place or disease at all. The Year of Plague seldom manifests as a character to speak with, preferring to observe its changelings at a remove. On the rare occasion that it does, it's a tattered, empty thing of red rags and a medieval plague doctor's mask from which noxious vapors spill endlessly. When it needs to act directly, whether to fetch new changelings or rein in a study subject grown unruly, it prefers to act through goblins or huntsmen, which naturally follow the same plague doctor motif as they don his livery. The Year of Plague casts a wide net for its changelings. Sorry, thought I saw an announcement. Anyone who survived a brush with a deadly disease is a potential candidate, as is anyone living in the outbreak zone of an epidemic. The year often takes doctors and humanitarian aid workers, opportunists and scavengers, and throws them all into a nightmare scenario to see how they adapt and react. Its changelings become weazened when they try over and over to cure the incurable, or ogres when they decide the best thing to do is to put everyone out of their misery. They may unite survivors and spread hope to become fairest, or eschew the company of others altogether to protect themselves, becoming scavenger beasts. Naturally, most of the plague victims in the Year of Plague are puppets, mere extensions of the year itself, and thus of no use to its studies. Every cycle, though, the year claims a number of mortals. Sometimes it takes a small cadre and places them together to examine their group dynamics. Other times, it takes a larger number and scatters them across its domain so it can see how they try to survive on their own. Anyone who has not escaped before the year is up is lost in the resetting, perhaps unmade entirely, or perhaps reduced to one of the automata set dressing the next incarnation of the year. Escape might come when a character realizes that civilization is but a thin veneer over chaos and ceases playing along, embraces the disease as his way out, or leads the survivors to work together and find a loophole. Actually curing the disease would likely end the year entirely, ejecting any changeling still within back to the mortal realm. Thank you, Demon, for the hydrate and posture check. I hope you have a good lurk. Also, chat, you want to think of something terrifying? Consider this. The Year of Plague is reported to mimic and recreate the situations of real-world plagues, right? But then it also says, anyone who has survived a brush with a deadly disease is a potential candidate, as is anyone living in the outbreak zone of an epidemic. We are still living in the time of a global pandemic, of a still incredibly dangerous disease. Do you realize what that means, chat? It means, literally, each and every one of us could be vulnerable to being taken by the Year of Plague. Sweet dreams. It Happened to Me, Part 6. Wendy. Adopting children is theoretically difficult. Oh. Hi, Tyrus. How you doing? Hello to you as well, duck that lives in my walls. Hi, Tyrus. Oh, gosh. Thank you, Sarah, for that stretch. Stretch. Posture check and hydrate. Ugh, gosh, trying to drown me, spinning me around when I'm drinking. Right. Adopting children. Oh, I saw, but I couldn't do anything in the moment, so I just had to hope I didn't get sent to the Shadow Realm. Adopting children is theoretically difficult. There are lots of interviews and social workers asking how secure your income really is, and the occasional insinuation that a child might prefer to be with someone more like them. It's less difficult when the children don't exist exactly. An extra handful of model minority children can disappear if you take them to the right neighborhood, but it gets harder again when you try to take them to the hospital or put them in school. Peter had a broken arm. June couldn't read. Robin thought I was a fairy. Summer couldn't speak English. And Michael wanted me to like him so badly it hurt my heart. Yes, income. This is something I have as a human adult. Oh. Last year, I made less than $1,000. I feel you. Oh gosh, I really feel you. Well, that's enough existential dread for me today. They sang like birds and could, to our mutual discovery, be both at once. It's a great bad joke because it's relatable, but also totally a Faye joke. Yeah. Bird children, running from someone who hurt them so badly I hear them crying in their sleep every night, huddled together in my bed. She kidnapped them and took away everything they could have been. I've had my worthiness questioned. I've been told that none of the things I am are important, but no one ever really took them away. No one pulled them out of my heart. At least I can give a little of that back to them. They don't actually look much like me or each other, but most Americans can't tell the difference, especially not with Hapa kids. I hadn't especially wanted children, but I had some time on my hands. A landlord who was willing to look the other way while I sorted out some runaways I found sleeping outside, and nothing worthier to be doing. But 4 children, 1 teenager, and an adult can't stay in an efficiency forever. Not without something to prove that I wasn't just another kidnapper. So the 6 of us decided that I had a handful of runaway cousins who would be close enough family that I could maybe get custodianship while we tried to find birth certificates to see if they had parents who knew their birth names. There we go. Hello, Jorge. How's it going? How you doing? I thought my inquiries... Oh, you're good? Want to hear your new bad joke of the night? I'm listening. Go on. I thought my What do you call it when you deflect an attack from a platypus? Do you perhaps parry the platypus? That's my guess anyway. Yeah, I won! I have decided for my win, I am going to go fishing. By the way, the fishing command still works, so if anyone wants to go fishing during stream, feel free. Parry this, you filthy platypus. Let's see what I get this time. An Atlantic cod. Yeah, that sounds about right. I thought my inquiries and public records searches had been subtle, but then I've never done this before. After a few days, I was sure I was being followed, but I couldn't think of by whom. ICE would have just busted down my door. The FBI would have detained me. The woman who came to my door smelled like wildflowers and sun, and her hair moved in a breeze that I couldn't see. The conversation that followed made my head feel fuzzy and faintly exposed, like I might have said some things I wouldn't have otherwise said out loud. Whoa, a legendary manta ray, congrats! Some things I wouldn't have admitted, but then she took off her face and gave me a happy smile, and offered us a place to stay, a stipend, a line on some better papers. It would be easier if they were my own kids on paper. Then she could earmark the stipend as alimony for my bank. It all made sense at the time, and at the end we were crying and hugging, and I felt better than I had in a lifetime. It was only a couple of months later, as I was waiting for Summer to come out of a dressing room, that it really hit me. I was wholly responsible for 5 children who had never been safe in their lives. One who could barely remember the world his siblings brought him back to, who just followed Summer and Peter out of love. They needed everything and almost nothing. They could feed themselves and clean the house and walk around safely in any weather. They could only sometimes speak without breaking into birdsong. They got spooked by crowds of people and guarded their food like they thought someone might take it. And I was getting paid to keep them out of trouble and socialize them into human society. It was literally my job to raise them upright. What kind of doctor treats transgender men? I'm not sure. What kind of doctor treats transgender men? I would imagine an endocrinologist. A gynecologist. Okay. Alright, I'll give you a head pat for that one. Pat, 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 pat. After several deep breaths, I emailed my old Mandarin teacher, put Peter in charge of making dinner, and went to go have my panic attack somewhere out of their line of sight. I drove around aimlessly for nearly an hour after taking them home, and wound up back at a coffee shop near the bay, chairs and tables scattered over a balcony that jutted out over the rocks. I used to live near here, back before everything. The coffee was still overpriced and underbrewed, but the familiarity was nice. I half recognized the man sitting out on the balcony from old runs. He walked slowly, sometimes talking so softly I could only see his lips move as I ran past. Harmless, if a little creepy. I guess kids have made me a soft touch, because when he gave me a plaintive, lonely look, I walked over. I didn't have time to scream, so I sent Peter 15 texts and drove home in the sudden downpour. with the man who wouldn't stop whispering about the end of the world. I tried not to notice when the lights cut out, but when a finger streaked across the windshield, I started shaking, and I didn't stop until I opened the lobby door to what had only been my home for a handful of months. There were the three women arguing, with hardly room for a shadow between them. Staring directly at them, a man who smelled like lightning striking, who flickered like the world was dropping frames. Then he pressed amidst the women and tightly grasping their shoulders. Clear your mind, Wendy. Get his attention. John trailed behind me like a lost thing as I strode towards them. My brain was screaming, pitched high and terrified for everyone I would lose if I didn't step just right. If Peter missed even one of the neighbors I sent him to. If the blonde didn't extend her trust and help me ground the women who were already fading under his touch. Well, isn't this a sweet tete-a-tete? His voice kept tuning like a broken record, words hissing around the static. We were in a wide, tile-floored atrium, the kind designed by someone who's never lived along a heavily trafficked apartment hallway. Noisy, sound muddied as it bounced back and forth between the tile and the glass, shoes squeaking, rain pelting, and people yelling as softly as they could over the din. I cracked the heel of my boot hard against the tile 3 times. The echo was as loud as I could have hoped it would be. Everyone who was left inside stilled and stared. I think you should leave. You're making those women uncomfortable. Focus on the moment. Get out of our building. People were shuffling between me and the doors outward. I listened for the click and heard an anguished howl from outside. Someone pounding on the glass door trying to get in. I couldn't look. His laughter was like breaking glass. I took another step forward, clacking my boots again, and pushed the blonde's arm. Grab their hands, I whispered. They need an anchor. I shoved her close enough to them that she would need to grab a hold of them to keep her balance. She almost let herself fall anyway, finally landing hard against the taller woman's collarbone. The three women all shuddered a little at the touch, and the 2 dazed ones began to shake off whatever hold he had on them. Not today, Satan! And Preeti slammed her fist against the back of his head. Smoke billowed up from the floor in hot waves, and the glass above us shattered, shards crashing down around us. This is great. I just love reading these fics. Oh my gosh. Oh, I promised my partner that I would go at the very latest until around... Oh, sorry, I just read someone who was describing my stream as ASMR. That's very sweet. So I would like to go further. However, I promised my partner that I would be done 8:30 at the latest today. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to skip through this section, chapter 6 for now. I would love to go through it, but I think right now I need to make sure that I'm able to, at the very least, cover the last of things. And then maybe we can come back to it later as a treat. Essentially, what this chapter is going over is different versions of what changeling society is like in example freeholds around the world. Each of these freeholds has a different system of courts, different setups as to what makes them safe, different mantles that hold different effects. It's honestly quite a lot going on, and it even includes a couple of example NPCs that are tied to those courts. Example places too, honestly. I God, I wanna read more of this book with everyone, but I also don't want to just spend the time only ever reading this book with people. Anyhow, we'll hopefully come back to these later, because I would love to make some characters with all of y'all. Oh my gosh. Alright. It Happened to Me, Part 7. Katrina. The sky cracked open, the surface of the water boiled, and the man with a leather jacket full of stars glitched up to the roof of the building. And for several long minutes no one followed. He wiped the flesh from his wet black hands and shook the blood from his bones and waited, impatiently, for the story to begin. The red one will be first by a heartbeat, he thought, with her backward palms and long straight hair. She wants to be the one who stands between people like him and the fragile world. Then her co-conspirator, matched in form but not substance, who will struggle to put the wall of her body between her foolhardy sister and himself. Is that thundering their feet on the stairs, or the borrowed blood in his ears? The serpent would rather hide, and the hind can't tell which way to run. The prey's instinctive urge to flee after discovering their huntsman softly breathing the same stale air. No reason he can't collect more than one bounty while waiting them out, though. The contract is flexible and rewards initiative. You know it's just toying with us, right? Adita said to Wendy's hastily assembled army. They can't even really be killed this side of the hedge. It's probably just waiting to catch as many of us at once as it can. She shivered, a glut of souls to take back with it. We live here. It's not like we can just pull up a whole apartment building worth of changelings and their kids to go hide and wait for it to pick us off one by one, Preeti said. Once upon a time, she was the gentler twin. Sometime in their durance, the righteous anger got wrung out of Adita and poured into her. Even if it doesn't stay gone, it will give us a chance to prepare a little before the next round. And as one of the kids who live here, please, I can't remember much of anything before Wendy saved us, but I know this is my first real home. I want to stay. I want to help. Michael and June seemed to be trying extra hard to look angelic and brave. They looked so young that it broke my heart. How do any of you even understand what it wants? It's just a mouthful of bees and static. I can feel it pressing in my ears and behind my eyes, but there aren't any words. Lucy was rallying faster than I thought she would. Grounding me and Amy seemed to have done her some good too. What is she still doing here? This has nothing to do with her. Sylvia doesn't much socialize with the normals after those ghost kids of her got harassed by some dude who thought he was hot shit for being able to see them in the first place. I think she still resents Wendy a little for getting to live here with all those swan babies. Well, it does a little bit. She's, married to my fetch, and she's basically defenseless. I can't just send her out into the night with him wandering around looking to spite us. Oh, Amy. Doesn't even matter if we're the dream team, we're the ones Wendy's got. So what's the plan? I try to stay out of team planning. I'm more of an underbrush girl. Well, I didn't know you couldn't actually kill him, which complicates things. It's not that we can't kill it exactly, it's just that it wouldn't matter if we tried here. Adita twisted and untwisted her braid around her wrist. They're only kind of real here. You need to find their hearts to actually stop them, buried somewhere in the woods around and between the Arcadian estates. She shrugged. So there's barely any point. We tear it to pieces and it'll only come back knowing how many pieces we were able to shred it into. I don't know. I feel like tearing him to pieces would be pretty therapeutic, all things considered, Preti said. But there was more agreements than demurrals. Maybe we could at least scare him off for a while, long enough to get this place hidden properly. With so many courts represented, surely someone could help us figure that out. I'm not the only one who's noticed that he's almost constantly discharging electricity, right? Some hesitant nods and some thoughtful ones. Remember that chunk on the roof that's just been a giant metal plate for 6 months? Let's stick him there with his own current, and Praiti can tear him to pieces. Wendy looked at the swan babies. I know I can't keep you here, and I won't make you claim that you'd stayed away from the fighting when I know you want to be there, but think about your siblings. They need you too. An army can't be quiet, especially not when trudging up an access staircase and filing out one at a time, but numbers are going to help us more than stealth. That kind of trick only works once. He felt them under his skin, even before the first strike caught him in place. Their infectious disloyalty seeping through his fingertips, the urge to run and find his heart, to go home. The hunter couldn't be distracted from his hunt, and yet, somehow, the hunter was distracted. And in his moment of startlement, the red twins pulled him in twain. Adita is crying, but Praiti is too pleased with herself to be much comfort, too fragile to move into her life's future, too ready to storm the hedge gates and tear up any threats to motley or freehold she can imagine. When did Wendy get so good at comforting people, at getting our attention, at treating our breaks and sprains and the 1,000 indignities that changeling flesh is heir to? I think she's a little wasted as a stay-at-home parent. Lucy and Amy are trying to work out custody of James's life. I don't think she quite believes that Amy really doesn't want to steal back into her own life, evicting her real husband. Amy just wants him to keep being good to their parents. No one knows how to tell him, or if they should. If they could live with the things they said to each other on the way to this moment, if either of them could forgive the other. The conversation skidded to a halt, so we sat in silence. I don't know that any of it was really forgivable. I don't know how you would even ask. The weight of too many memories and not enough time. The rain took the place of words, winds slowing where we might have apologized, trees sighing where we might have forgiven. Also, look at this thick as hell fight scene. Hell yeah. Alright. So, since I really do want to approach this in a way that I can make it accessible to the players that I will be playing with, I don't think I'll be going through a lot of this section. But I do want to touch on one more facet of the kind of character you can play in this game. So, We've talked an awful lot about changelings, right? But we haven't really talked nearly as much about the humans that are connected to them still on this side of the hedge. So, to wrap up tonight's story time, I think we want to talk just a little bit about them, okay? Those being the Fae Touched. All right. I mean, who am I to refuse Jolkin, Rolkin, Rolkin, Tolkien, a little quote now and then? And many quailed to hear the dread words, for so sworn, good or evil, an oath may not be broken, and it shall pursue oath-keeper and oath-breaker to the world's end. Human interactions with fairy tend to end poorly for the human. Humans who enter the hedge rarely return, and those who see a fey creature's true mien are stricken with awe and fear. Yet within the ranks of humanity are a few who have experienced the realm of fairy and have returned from that place different, but not changed as the lost are. These people are referred to as Fey-touched, for they carry a piece of the weird inside them. The lost refer to them as the avowed, honoring their devotion to keeping promises. Fey-touched are not just people who happen to see a changeling's mien, or see past the illusion placed on a fetch. They are much more than that. Every single one of them has been inside the hedge, and a few have even been to the outer edges of Arcadia. How humans become Fey-touched varies person to person, but all follow a common thread. They once made a promise with someone who is now a changeling. The promise was not something small, like a promise to walk the dog or call in the morning. It was something big, like the promise a mother makes to her child to always be there for him, the promise between sisters to never lie to one another, the promise between best friends to name their firstborn children off after each other. Whatever the promise and whatever the circumstances, one of the members was taken, and the promise was left unfulfilled but remembered. Unfulfilled promises between humans are common. The difference is in the intention. The person left behind keeps her promise. The friend has children, and her first child is named after her long-lost best friend. The mother somehow knows that the fetch replacing her child is not real and never gives up hope of finding her real son. The lover never takes another, knowing that her true love is still out there somewhere. These people never gave up hope, never gave up on their promises, and remained true. The kept promise forges a link between human and changeling. The changeling bolstered in her resolve to escape her bonds, the human drawn inexplicably towards fairy and her promised counterpart. Just because someone has made a promise to a changeling doesn't make her automatically a Fey-touched human. Instead, they must enter the hedge and make it out again. Getting into the hedge is not difficult, and neither is it accidental. These people are drawn to fairy, seeking it out subconsciously as they perform their daily tasks. Some resist the unrealized desire and are capable of living their lives in peace. Yet as the years go by, the pull becomes stronger until eventually even the most resistant gives in. This is especially true if the person they keep their promise to is still trapped in Arcadia. For others, the pull is inescapable from the start and it rules their lives. Someone always goes into the hedge, even if the person who originally made the promise does not. Maybe she dies of an accident or resists long into old age. Someone takes up the promise, usually hereditary, children or grandchildren perhaps. They have no direct descendants than a niece, nephew, cousin, even. I'm not going to be able to read through all of this. Essentially, The Fae Touched have a potent power over promises and oaths. But the trade-off is they are inherently drawn to the hedge and to Fae entities, which are dangerous to human beings, period. And they also all have a little bit of a touch of madness because they have been into a place of pure delirium and dream. And also, as you can see, there's a lot of different promises that you can get power from, which is a really neat concept. But since we only have a few minutes left, I want to just read a little bit of the backstories of some of these potential Fae Touched. A mother follows lead after lead, looking for her real child. She promised him that she'd always be there for him. She used everything at her disposal, following the old stray threads of his passing. Her determination leads her constantly to the place she last saw him, his school. She spends her evenings scouring the area, looking for any evidence that something happened there, though it's been months or even years. One fateful day, she sees a partial scrap of a shoelace. It's his shoelace. She's certain of it. She sees another scrap of cloth further in the distance, and she runs to it, passing beneath the overhanging arch of an old oak branch. Her environment abruptly changes, brambles surrounding her on all sides. In front of her is a narrow footpath, and she knows deep in her heart that her son lies at the end of the trail. A woman comes home to find an uncommonly messy house. Her wife is in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Everything about the situation screams to her that something is wrong. She sees a spot of blood on the floor, and as she inspects it, she sees a piece of a broken fingernail colored the same as her wife's. She looks at her wife's hand, but none of the nails are broken. She makes up an excuse and leaves the house quickly, unable to return to whatever it is in there. Her wife is gone, but she had promised her that she would always fight for their right to be together. The front garden is torn up, and she wonders how she didn't notice that earlier. She follows the path of small details out of place until she reaches a clearing. She sees two paths that look exactly the same, but her heart points her left, and she does not hesitate before stepping off in that direction. His older sister is a monster. Or maybe the monster isn't his sister at all? He wasn't sure how it happened, but he knew that one day she came home from college and she was a monster. He can't really see the sticks and mud that make her up, but he can feel them when he touches her, and he can smell the dirt around her. No one believes him. They tell him to go watch TV or read a book and leave her alone. He takes walks to the place they used to go to together before she moved out. They promised each other they'd always come here once a year to catch up. He feels a sense of her here and lets his mind wander as he sits for hours before his mother calls him home. One day, he gets lost on the way back home. He knows these footpaths like the back of his hand, but somehow they turn him around. And just as quickly as he is lost, he finds the right path and starts down it between all the thorny vines that seem to reach out for him. She is his best friend, but she hasn't called in days. They used to talk every night, and now she won't return his texts. He goes looking for her, but she isn't at home, and none of her other friends know where she might have gone. No note, no word, and more distressing is the fact that her house looks so normal, like she's just in the other room. Her phone and keys lay on the table beside the door, just like always. He starts asking around, and no one has seen or heard from her. He even calls her parents, and they say she called them yesterday. He can't believe it. They promised each other they'd never keep secrets, so he keeps looking. Then he finds someone that may know someone, makes a call, sets up a meeting. This person knows where she is. They say the path is hard and long, but she's been kidnapped. They can't help, but they can point him in the right direction. He just has to go out the back door and follow the little footpath he sees there. And I am so sorry, chat, to leave it at that for everyone, but I'm afraid we do have to wrap up for tonight, okay? I hope you all enjoyed story time at least. But I now need to go because I got to spend some time with my partner. By the way, you just unlocked a memory core with the word delirium. Oh? Were you a big fan of Sandman? Oh. Oh, hello, Greenie. I'm sorry that you're just coming in as I have to wrap up stream, but hopefully you were able to enjoy what you heard at least. Anywho. Alright, so I'm gonna start looking for someone for us to raid. Let's see, who's on right now? Well, first things first. Pop, pop. Let's pop over here. Alright, so as I am looking for my raid target, a quick run through of the special thanks first, of course, to Sir Ottoman and Sir Bubble Buns. Thank you to our subscribers who swung out, Absurd Bird. Thank you to our new follower, Silken Soul. And to everyone who keeps supporting these streams, for all the viewers like you, thank you. Alright, let's see. We have one more stream this week. That is going to be tomorrow at 2 p.m. EST. We're going to be continuing along with everyone's, well, maybe not everyone, I'm sure there's at least a couple other goblin aunties, but my favorite auntie, who is also a goblin, Auntie Griselda, is going to continue through with her Yakuza Kiwami playthrough. I have no idea how far in she is, but she seems to still be having fun. Very violent, cathartic fun. So if you want to see a very angry goblin auntie throw hands with the entire Japanese mafia, I hope you'll swing by. Is the head pat one-time use per stream? No? I don't think so. Like, I can activate that just fine. But again, thank you all so much for swinging by. I hope you had a great time tonight, and I hope to see you for Yakuza Kiwami with Auntie Griselda tomorrow at 2 p.m. EST. Alright. While I am plugging in the info for our raid target, could someone please give me a exclamation point socials command? Thank you. The first link there is my card. That has pretty much all of my socials. So if you want to just see, all the stuff I've got going on, check it out. That's also where I put my commission info, though that is going to be updated after I finish my current workload. Then we have the Discord. If I am on there, which you will know because I make sure to set my status to green, I am there to hang out, to talk, to sate my constant need for companionship. So if you want to hang out and get to know me or any of the amazing people who have decided to become a part of this community, I hope you'll consider joining the Discord. Then we have Twitter. I am still on there despite the fact that it's, a freaking mess. if you would like to join in over there, I still post stuff, schedules, artwork now and then. I do the retweets. Y'all know how it is. And then finally the YouTube, where I put my VODs when I remember, hey, B, you gotta put your VODs somewhere. They keep disappearing. I know you don't want to edit them, and that's fine, I guess, but you should still do something with them. Alright. You know, I don't really want to spend too much trying to figure out where to raid because I just want to have dinner with my husband. So let's just raid into Silver Verity tonight. Looks like she's having fun with some kind of RPG Maker horror game. Those are always nice. If you're coming along for the raid, here are some raid messages you can use. Anyone can use the first one. If you have a subscription, you could also use the second one if you want. And again, thank you all very much for keeping me company. These streams are always a little more experimental, so I'm never entirely sure how they're gonna go, but I'm always glad when people find themselves genuinely interested in things, so thank you. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your nights, whatever that is for you. So until I see you again, here's a hug, a smooch if you prefer, and until I see you again, remember that somebody really cares about you, okay? Alright, I love you. I'll see you all tomorrow at 2 p.m. EST for some more Auntie Griselda, Goblin Auntie takes on the Yakuza. But for now, I love ya. Goodbye.